Call this meeting of the JPS meeting to order, a special call. I don't have a gavel. Can I have a roll call, please?
Chair Ranahan,
Here.
Member Chaplin,
Here.
Member Covert, Member Desart,
Here.
Member Eckhoff, Member Garcia,
Here.
Member Krajewski,
Here.
Member Ozog,
Here. Sorry.
Member Pachalski, Member Schwarzy,
Here.
Member Selman,
Here.
Member Zay,
Here.
Is that everyone?
yes.
Okay. And do we have any public comment?
Joe DC, any here, please?
I'm sorry, do we have public
No
comment?
public comment.
Okay, no public comment. So good afternoon and welcome to our JPS special call meeting regarding House Bill 3653, what is now being referred to as the Safety Act, an acronym for Safety, Accountability, Fairness, Equity today. Vice Chair Pachalski and I would like to welcome the County Board and our public safety stakeholders to this meeting. The purpose of our discussion today is to gain a better understanding of the financial costs of House Bill 3653 and how it will affect the county's budget, both in upfront expenses and in the coming years. I would like to take a moment and thank our public safety stakeholders and staff for putting together projections of what impacts might look like. Today, we will hear presentations from each of our affected agencies to determine what budgetary allocations may be needed to comply with the provisions of the Act. The information being presented by each agency is based on best initial estimate of anticipated costs. Next steps will include further refinement of potential expenses, development of potential savings, and finding a funding source. As this law is still new and all the impacts are not yet known, we appreciate everyone's effort to obtain estimates for us to review. I will also note that it is possible trailer bills may be enacted over the next several years that may change some of the requirements, thereby altering these numbers. However, today we need to base our expectations on what we know today. At the end of the presentations, Chief Financial Officer Jeff Martinowitz will present us with a summary of the costs presented. To keep things flowing, it would be appreciated if we wait to ask until the end of the entire presentation. All agencies and departments will be available for questions as a panel at that time. I would like to make one more comment before we weigh in with today's discussion. To keep things efficient and informative, I ask that all questions be related to the financial impacts of the bill only. I know and respect that each of us have our own personal thoughts on this legislation, but it has been signed and enacted into law. We must now come together and determine how we can support our public safety stakeholders. And with that, I would like to turn it over to our Policy and Program Manager, Jason Blumenthal, to give us a quick overview of the bill and start up the presentations. Jason?
Thank you, Chair Ranahan. I'll give Wendy here a moment. You can go on to slide 2. I was asked to put together a presentation of all the financial impacts of Public Act 101-0652, also known as House Bill 3653. We have coordinated a presentation with all the affected agencies. Each agency has done their best to come up with an estimate based on the information readily available today, absent any passage of future legislation. Next slide. The bill can be broken into 4 different sections. The first being criminal justice reform, second, violence reduction and victim services, 3, police accountability, and 4, police decertification. Next slide. The first section is criminal justice reform. The act removes any requirement of posting monetary bail and changes language to state pretrial release. There is now a presumption that a defendant is entitled to a pretrial release on their own personal recognizance on the condition they will attend all future court proceedings and will not commit another criminal offense. The Illinois Supreme Court will also create a pretrial release formula to allow judges to assess the likeliness of a defendant to comply with the conditions set out. The major aspects of the criminal justice reform section are to be effective on January 1st, 2023. Next slide. The second section includes violence reduction and victim services. The act directs the courts to take the safety of a crime victim into consideration when setting pretrial release conditions for a defendant. In addition, it prohibits law enforcement officers from restraining individuals above their shoulders if it could cause an inability to breathe. As well, force cannot be used as punishment or retaliation, and if pepper spray or tear gas is to be used, an order must be given clearly and allow an individual ample time to comply with that order. Last in this section is the requirement of the Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board to create minimum mental health screenings standards for all police officers. Other measures include more training on medical responses, critical crisis intervention training, and other medical health training. Next slide. The third section is police accountability. This section requires all law enforcement officers to wear body cameras. Once the cameras are used by agencies, they will be required to submit a report to the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board showing compliance. The act has a few requirements that fall within multiple sections, and I wanted to include the Illinois Police Training Act, again, to show that officers do need to conduct a certain set number of hours of all the different trainings within a 3 period to stay in compliance with the act. Next slide. The fourth and final section is police decertification. The act allows individuals to file a complaint with the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board, who will investigate any allegations against a police officer. The act also grants the Standards Board the authority to revoke and/or suspend a police officer's certification. Next slide. And now with that, I would like to invite the Honorable Chief Judge Popejoy to come speak about the Circuit Court, and we'll go from there on to our next department.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time that you have given to all of us today, the time that you're putting forth this afternoon to come in and to listen to our presentations. You know, you're going to get a presentation from me on behalf of the court system, my probation director, the sheriff, the state's attorney, the public defender, and the clerk. This is a team effort that's coming in here and addressing you today. These are not separate little agencies vying for separate little pieces of the pie. We're a group that's working together. We're a group that needs to work together. Directly and indirectly, we are managing the judicial aspect, the third branch of government, and we need a concerted effort to pull that off. As a part of that team effort, all of us are honored to present our various aspects of what are needed for each of our agency and how they're interacting with each of the other agencies that are a part of our team. To our team, though, we need to add all of you, the county board, to our teamwork, to our effort, to our commitment for what's needed in the future. The first slide, please. So 735 ILCS 5/110 pretrial release. That's what this is all about. It's a large bill. It's an expansive bill. It has a lot of fingers and a lot of tentacles that are going out as to what is required. Fortunately, purely from the judicial point of view, we don't have a lot of things that we will need to comply with this as far as the judges go. We have 48 judges in this circuit. As you know, we are the second largest circuit in the state of Illinois, only behind Cook County. We are a leader in this state, not only the judicial branch, but our probation department, our state's attorney, our public defender, our sheriff, our clerk. We are the leaders in this state. This state looks to see what we're doing because we're innovative. We're in front of the ball. We're the ones that are attacking this full force. And we've had the gracious support of CARES Act money and all of you to take care of us getting into the pandemic and through it. Now we need you to help us get out and move on with what's involved. For the requirements of this legislation as it relates to the judiciary, it is requiring in-person pretrial detention hearings for most criminal cases. Now, it's a marked difference from what's been required before. It's going to require a bond court to be held in courtroom 1000. Now, that's a courtroom that's over in the sheriff's office, right, kind of off from when you go in the front door. We used to do bond court at 8 a.m. in the morning and Saturday and Sunday morning. I remember some of the New Year's Eve bond courts or New Year's Day bond courts that were kind of funny with what happened the night before, but be that as it may. We have a courtroom that's set up for all of that, but that is now going to be used extensively and to a much greater level than ever used before, because we have to allow for inmates to appear in person. That courtroom will need to be modified for this purpose. The specifics of the modification I'm not aware of per se. It's not going to require changing too much, but it will need to be modified for the volume of people coming through. Additionally, there's an anticipated length and complexity of these detention hearings. They're not going to be quick little bond courts like they were before. There's going to be a lot of services that have to be addressed, a lot of reviews that have to be addressed, a lot of input that has to be addressed. And that's going to require probably one judge to be dedicated exclusively to those hearings for pretrial release. Now, we can do that. As I said, we have 48 judges. We have the full complement of judges. We're employed by the state. We're funded by the state. We have all the judges that we can have population-wise for this county. So we're not looking for another judge or the like, but it will require other rooms and other services to be done. We're also anticipating the continued and extended growth of what we've already seen in domestic violence cases. Because of the pandemic and because of some other factors, those are increasing at almost a logarithmic level. And we need to accomplish that and take care of those litigants in regard to that. So with that, that's going to require a reallocation of some existing court calls. We may have to take some numbers from one, add some numbers to some misdemeanor calls, take some numbers away from certain places so that we can free up a judge to do these full hearings and free up another judge to do these domestic violence increase in hearings. We will do it. We will do it without the increase of any judges. We can do that. We're ready to roll our sleeves up and take that down. But it is going to require additional clerks, additional state's attorneys, and additional public defenders in order to take care of those needs for the all-day bond court, for the additional domestic violence call. And those things will need to be accomplished for our courtroom to function perfectly. You know, as we're well aware, us judges get a little full of ourselves sometimes, and we sit up high in the bench and we got the black robes and everybody's all respectful to us, but we function as a team. You know, it's the judge, it's the clerk, it's the deputy, it's the state's attorney, it's the public defender. We're a team in there. It doesn't function with just one of us, and it can't function in the absence of any of us. So it's essential that the clerk, the state's attorney, and the public defender get their needs fulfilled in order for the judiciary to take care of their requirements. The upfront, next slide, please, I'm sorry. The upfront purchasing cost from the judicial point of view, unknown at the current time, but it's just a remodeling of that courtroom 1000. It's all we're really going to need to do. It'll be more of a cosmetic thing, moving things around, some furniture aspects of things, but nothing from a major expense. The long-term recurring costs that we have right now from just the judicial point of view is dealing with secretarial staff, administrative assistants. Right now, there are 22 judges in 22 courtrooms that are being fully supported and handled by 3 administrative assistants. 3 have to cover all of those court calls, the statuses, the attorneys calling in, everything else. It's going to get more intense with this bill. We are going to need one more principal legal secretary, administrative assistant at a cost of about $50,000 so that when we go from 3 to 4 people, there is going to be a massive administrative influx that comes in. We'll handle it on the bench, but there's a lot of things that get handled off to the side. A lot of people in that building make us 48 judges look really good, but we can't do it without those people supporting us. We are needed to have those additional people for the increased scheduling, the allocation issues between courtrooms. All those things are going to be developing and things that we're going to have to be working through on a point-by-point basis. Well, I'm here to answer any questions or concerns that you may have at a later time. I understand the aspect of that to get through these presentations done, but I do want to thank you now for your time and your attention to each and every one of us today as a part of this team coming in and talking to you as a part of our team. Because I want to thank you today for the tireless efforts that lie ahead for all of you to help all of us cope with, properly function, and perform in the light of this new legislative mandate. I want to thank you very much for your time and attention today. I'd like to turn it over down to my Director of Probation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Judge Popejoy, members of the County Board. Thank you for inviting us here to speak how this House bill will be impacting our departments. The first area that will impact probation is in the pretrial data collection piece of the statute. Requirements of this legislation is that the probation and pretrial departments are to provide various data points to the newly created pretrial practices data oversight board on a quarterly basis. We currently don't provide a lot of this information to the AOIC, so we're going to have to develop ways to retrieve this information, work with our circuit clerk, as well as our case management system provider to be able to pull out this data. Next slide, please. We anticipate needing an additional staff member in our pretrial unit to collect and report out on this data. The yearly salary and benefits of this position would be about $46,000. Next slide, please. The next area of the legislation that will impact probation, and this is all going to impact our pretrial services unit. The next area is determining conditions of release. Part of the requirements of this legislation are that the court may use a regularly validated risk assessment tool to aid its determination of appropriate conditions of release. Next slide, please. Probation Department's pretrial unit is responsible for completing pretrial bond reports and the risk assessment. We'll need to hire additional officers to complete the anticipated increase in bond reports and assessments. The yearly anticipated cost for these 4 officers is just under $225,000. Next slide, please. The final area we feel it will impact probation is the abolition of monetary bail. As we all know, on and after January 1, 2023, the requirement of posting monetary bail is abolished. All references to bail are replaced with pretrial release. Next slide, please. Probation's pretrial unit is responsible for supervising the pretrial conditions of those released from jail. Since the Bail Reform Act became effective January 1, 2018, those released from jail on pretrial supervision have increased by 80%. Probation will need additional pretrial staff to supervise the increase of those released from jail. All told, we anticipate needing to hire an additional 14 pretrial staff to cover the extra costs. Cost for the 14 pretrial staff is just under $900,000 at $878,300. That is by 2023. We also anticipate our GPS monitoring costs will increase as they have over the past couple of years by about $100,000 per year by 2023. All totaled, we anticipate just under $1 million hit to our budget, $978,300. How'd I come at these figures? Next slide, please. As you can see, the pretrial population since 2014 has grown tremendously. Between 2014 and 2017, numbers were pretty consistent. As I mentioned, the Bail Reform Act went into play on January 1, 2018. And as you can see, our numbers have steadily increased. Between 2017 and 2018, there was a 23% increase to over 1,000 people on average daily population on pretrial supervision. In 2019, we saw a 36% increase from the previous year, just under 1,400 people on pretrial supervision on a daily basis. And in 2020, we have just under 1,800 people being supervised on pretrial supervision. Likewise, our GPS monitoring has increased significantly as well. Between 2017 and 2020, it's increased by 68%. A lot of these people that are put on GPS monitoring can't afford to pay for the cost of monitoring, so the probation department has to cover that cost. That's where the $100,000 per year figure comes from. Additionally, last thing, I know facilities is going to talk more about this, but we don't have any more space in the probation department. Currently, we have 10 staff members who are on the 3rd floor of the 503 building. Adding 14 additional pretrial staff will mean that there are 24 staff that we can't fit in our current configuration of the probation department. And I know facilities is going to talk more about that. With that being said, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today.
Next up, we have Sheriff James Mendrick in his office.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having us out today. Really appreciate it. I'm going to go as quick as I can. I know we don't want to be here all day. I do have the most slides. I'm sorry. It's just that it impacts us more directly than everybody else because of the nature of what this is. It's about police and public safety. So pretty much, I'm just going to start and I'm going to throw out a lot of information. The slides also, I'd like to let you know that if you look at the top, we put CHB page 69. So we would correlate the verbiage from the House bill to the slide so you'd understand why we're asking for what we are and where it attaches to that 800-page document. Okay, so this is from HB page 69. 30 hours of mandatory in-service training will need to be completed every 3 years. In addition to the requirements of crisis intervention training, a 12-hour minimum of hands-on scenario-based training, a minimum of 6 hours of instruction of the use of force techniques, including the use of de-escalation techniques, and a minimum of 6 hours of training focused on high-risk traffic stops. HB 3653 is adding emergency medical response training and certification to complete annually. There's no real explanation in HB 3653 what medical response training is or what it entails. So there's going to be a lot of things that aren't really clear that are going to have to be hashed out as this is incepted. So Illinois State Training Board current mandates are mandatory firearms training, annual firearm qualifications, Narcan, epinephrine, Prison Rape Elimination Act, Law Updates, Use of Force, Hazmat, CPR, AED, Constitutional and Proper Use of Authority, Procedural Justice, Civil Rights, Cultural Competency, Mental Health Awareness and Response, Reporting Child Abuse and Neglect, Officer Wellness, Trauma-Informed Response and Investigation, Sexual Assault, Sexual Abuse, Psychology of Domestic Violence, Specialized Training by Assignment, Canine Detectives, Narcotics Investigators, etc. Again, I'm sorry I'm going fast. It's just there's a lot of information. I want to make sure I get it all out. The Illinois State Training Board will be required to approve a standard curriculum for certified training programs in crisis intervention of at least 40 hours. This course may be available in electronic format, but the DuPage County Sheriff's Office has already implemented a 40-hour CIT class. Of the 115 patrol deputies, only 48 still need to attend, and that's only because we've had a lag in classes of COVID. We weren't able to hold, big rooms of classes. I think we're up to training almost 750 people countywide for de-escalation. The good thing about this one, this is a mandate. We already do this. This isn't going to cost any money. We've already done this. We're moving to a diversity element within our CIT. So that's all built in. This is already budgeted for, so this will not impact, but that is also from HP page 77 if you need the reference. Mental health screenings. Regular confidential mental health screenings for both probation and permanent police officers. That's effective July 1 of 2021. That is going to be about $200 a person. That'll be probably about a total of $23,000. Law Enforcement Warrant Body Camera Act. This is HB page 78. Mandates that all law enforcement must be equipped and use officer warrant body cameras. According to the implemented schedule, DuPage County Sheriff's Office will have to have every one of their 115-person law enforcement deputies outfitted with the camera by January 1, 2022. The count of 115 is all office members assigned to Law Enforcement Bureau, including command staff, patrol, detectives, forensic investigations, community resource unit, and civil division. One thing that we're still hashing out to, it's going to affect a lot of what we do with corrections, because in corrections, a lot of those deputies in corrections don't have the law enforcement certification, but do a lot of ancillary duties for us. They will have to be body cam now as well, because they'll meet the criteria of having contact with citizens. This cost will probably be about $2,515,464. The Officer Warrant Body Camera Act also requires each law enforcement agency to submit an annual report on use of officer warrant body cameras to the Illinois State Training Board by May 1st of each year. The balance of the total purchase, there's a 180 because it's 115, but it's 180 because that'll include people assigned to transport, swap, any other required field assignment, including special events such as Medina PGA events, election details, etc. It's also going to it may take away eventually details, because details are like a pseudo law enforcement function. Correction personnel have participated in the past, but we're being told now that that would require them to actually have the law enforcement training, body cams, all that stuff. So this will erode our ability to do details over time. It might eventually be, we won't be able to do them. If we can't have the staff to run a detail in corrections, again, is part of who we use to run those details. We may not be able to do those for ancillary agencies, churches, and all that kind of stuff. Funds for body cameras, year one, it's $632,064. Years 2 through 5, you're seeing the dip there because the 632, you got the capital expense of the actual product added in there. So it goes down for years 2 through 5. Total, it's going to be $2,515,464. Utilization of the Axon platform is a sole source technology that ties into our existing platform. So instead of us scrapping all the tech that we already have and then repurchasing, we're building on to the Axon platform that we have. One use of that Axon 2 is it does include a virtual training for mental health where you're actually in VR and can see the effects of mental health issues. And then it switches your role. And all of a sudden you're the police officer dealing with the person that had the mental health issue. When you put this helmet on, you actually pick autism or schizophrenia, and you'll hear the voices inside your head. Everything will be too bright, too loud. You'll actually get to experience what somebody with these afflictions have to deal with. And then, like I said, it flips and all of a sudden you get to be the one dealing with that person. So it's going to be very cutting edge de-escalation training that will be included within this. Uniform Crime Reporting Act, that's HB page 90. Starting July 1st, 2021, monthly reports will have to be submitted to the Illinois State Police Reporting. So that's any incident law enforcement officer is dispatched to deal with the person experiencing mental health crisis, including details of the report. I hope you realize how expansive that is because mental health issues, since the lockdown started way back then, it's been exacerbating. We've been seeing more overdoses, more mental health issues, depression, that's running rampant now, and we're seeing it in the form of a lot of domestics. Any use of force, including any action resulting in death or serious bodily injury, discharge of firearm, at or in the direction of a person, compliance with all required reporting shall factor into the consideration of grant funding under Illinois Law Enforcement Camera Grant Act. And we have been looking for grants for these, but the grants, everything we found is simply reimbursements if you do all these things over a certain amount of time. So there's no guarantee on these. It is a feeding frenzy out there too, because it's a statewide mandate and everybody's looking for grant monies for the exact same object. So it becomes very competitive. Compliance and reporting. Compliance to all newly required reports will require the employment of another full-time sworn supervisor in a sergeant's position. It's got to be a sergeant's position because you're going to have somebody reviewing tape for use of force. There could be action, whether remedial training, discipline, all that kind of stuff. It's going to be a very large position. It's going to require a lot of reporting and monitoring and reviewing of video. This employee will be responsible for review of all body camera footage, FOIA requests, all monthly annual reports submitted to ISP, Illinois State Training Board, FBI. It's also we're going to need 2 additional record clerks who will be needed to comply with the influx of additional FOIA requests, data collection, et cetera. We model this over the patterns that we've seen other people who've implemented this at other police agencies. 1 additional warrants clerk will be needed in expectation of additional warrants. And there are a lot of warrants out there. That's one thing that is going to come to roost eventually when everything opens back up, is the amount of warrants that are out there right now. IA Pro is a leading professional standard software to ensure proper reporting, use of force, internal affairs, incidents, compliant tracking. Now, remember, we have to make sure that we do this because the way they're talking about these body camera, if there's a problem and these things get shut off, they're actually talking about it being official misconduct. People could lose their jobs. So it's essential that we manage this project properly. Police Law Institute, the Police Law Institute is a scenario-based online instruction platform. It'll ensure that the law enforcement officers will maintain compliance with the most mandates. In addition, live scenario-based training will need to be completed to be compliant with the new mandates also. So breakdown of costs for Law Enforcement Bureau. Again, there's 3 bureaus: a Corrections Bureau, a Law Enforcement Bureau, and Administrative Bureau, which is the courthouse, the crime lab, and all that kind of stuff, IT. 115 body cameras. That's the 2,515,000 number. Sergeant salary is about 115. Then you have 34,325 for the records clerk. We factored in benefits, so it comes out to about, for 2, it's $68,650. Unknown at this point what additional training costs will be for the new mandates. Again, there's so many pages, and every time we read this thing, we find something else, and it's like, wow, we didn't really catch that before. But there's so much material, it is going to take time to make sure we're doing what the intent is to accomplish here. So it was going to be 30 hours of required training over a 3-year period. It's going to be 12 hours of mandate, hands-on scenario-based training, then an additional 10 hours a year of just all the other training requirements that are in there. So that's going to be 22 hours, 115 deputies will have to be paid. It's going to have to be done as an overtime issue. That'll be 3,795 paid man hours per year that we'll have to get this extra required training that's coming down. Average deputy salary is about 89,146. It comes out to 6429. Overtime hours and arbitrated award salary increases, drive all those numbers and what those are. That's just how much money. There is a Scrivener's error right after the overtime hours for the first year increasing thereafter. It says higher overtime rates for detective sergeant, lieutenants, command staff. You can cut off. We don't get overtime. That was an error. IA Pro 47,800 startup with 10,000 yearly maintenance fee. That's the reporting machine. That everything that we need that'll get tabulated, reported, all the things that'll keep us out of trouble is going to be, that machine is going to actually take care of just about all of that. Police Law Institute annual subscription. That's where we do our bulk of our training. That's going to be increased about $15,525. Mental health screening. That one I told you already, that's going to be $22,180. Then we go Corrections Bureau training, 30 hours mandatory training every 3 years. Also scenario based, hands-on, mandatory. It's going to have to be off duty. We're just not going to be able to do this just as part of routine. It's additional. This is what we're doing now. We have to do extra. Cost per deputy. It's going to be about $613.62 annually based off the 2020 average salary. Total cost for the training corrections will be about $128,859.23. This is solely new training from the House bill. See HB page 69. Does not include current training costs. Then potential academy increase due to expanded curriculum. The academy is going to try to start packing some of these things in. They haven't said what yet, but I have heard that it could be 2,000 extra a person for the academy for law enforcement, but this is a corrections academy. This one is approximately 2,500 a deputy, 20 deputies per year would be about $50,000. Instructor cost is going to be 20 training days. It's obviously overtime instructor rate with 20 days annual, 10 hours each. That's $16,617. Probationary officers and laterals. That'll be new people who require this training upon coming in. That'll be $12,393. The increase we're looking at for corrections will be about $207,869. That's a projected estimate, 2.5 annual salary increases, just what we would consider that we're getting an arbitrated award increase for each of the following 4 years. Abolition of monetary bail. That's going to be HB page 335. This one's going to affect us probably the most. You have correctional center population effects. Overall population drop, approximately 66% are currently violent offenders. This will cause us to lose commissary funds as there isn't a mandate for people to be in a correctional facility. The commissary is where people who are incarcerated purchase items that they want to have in addition to what we give them, and they pay for them. And the company that runs this, that money goes into what we call the commissary account. It can only be used for the betterment of the inmates. And that is how we pay all of the Just of DuPage salaries. The entire Just structure comes from that. So that will end up being a cost for Just of DuPage that we will do everything that we can to keep. But it's going to be 33% loss is what we're looking at. Total commissary sales, we're 687,000, and then a loss of 226,000 roughly is what we're going to be looking at there. Direct effective vocational programs too. For what we do, like the people who are in for burglary or cases that won't be kept in corrections anymore, they were all the ones that did what we call trustee work. So the cooking, maintenance, laundry, all those, we don't need contracts because we have our trustees supervised by our deputies to accomplish all these things. You can't take a violent offender and give them a knife and say, go cook in the kitchen. That's not practical. That's very dangerous. So what this is going to do is the laundry alone. You know, there's a lot of laundry. If you come in, and this won't be affected by anything with the depopulation because people are going to still be bringing everybody into us. We're the only correctional facility in the county. So the 36 municipalities are going to still bring people to us every day for every offense. So you come in, you're going to be wearing our clothes, you're going to eat, you're going to still do those numbers. We'll probably get more people coming through our correctional facility than we ever did before. So it's actually an increased transient population to where we're going to have a ton. And when the courthouse and the system opens up again and the warrants, all that combined, we will probably have the highest population that we've ever had in our jail before. And we're going to have to learn how to feather that out because we have a gang problem. We have 35% are from Cook County residents now in our correctional facility. We're having a big spike in gang activity. So we've noticed that the new clientele from the city are more inclined to be involved in gangs and flash fights we have to worry about. So that's more separation. You don't want to put people into a small hot pocket that's going to cause fights. So it's going to be a weird effect that we're going to reduce who we have long-term, but it's increase our transient because everybody's going to still be bringing people in. And it is a recidivism model. Truth be told, if you do somebody detox, drug recovery, mental health, you know, vocationals, anger management, that's what we do now, but instead it will be release them and there will be a spike in recidivism. So it's likely we'll see the same person over and over and over again now prior to them being, sentenced to Stateville for having 3 charges, So it is gonna change that whole thing, but it isn't gonna be any save to our manpower. We're also 19 people down currently in our correctional facility. So this is actually gonna create a whole lot of work, a whole lot of additional work for our correction staff. Loss of the trustee eligible inmates is direct effect of our vocational programs too. So again, to clean the place, we're gonna either contract that out or deputies are gonna be cleaning it, and then we'll need more deputies. It's cheaper to contract. Increase in violent offender percentage, high liability offenders, altercation, use of force increases probable. 2020 fees totaling 79,830. 2019 was 133,211. Let me see, I think that's everything. Yeah, also, we have to try to keep our population. This is a scary thing too. COVID's not over. I mean, we're still dealing with infection, and we've been very fortunate how we played it so far. We are at 0% COVID in our correctional facility, and that's been because we had to vacate a 4th floor, space people out. A lot of those options could be taken away from us if we don't have the trustees. So bail bond fees collected, I just did those numbers. 5 additional deputies are going to be needed for an anticipated all-day bond court session. Those 5 deputies will be about $1,342,000. Pregnant detainees, this is a low frequency, high liability area. 2019, we had about 28 pregnant females, 3 sent out for delivery. In 2020, it was 8 pregnant females, 0 sent out for delivery. But there's mandates and educational programs for pregnant detainees now, including appropriate prenatal care and hygiene, effects of prenatal exposure to alcohol and drugs, developing fetus, parenting skills, medical and mental health issues applicable to children. That's fine. That's not a problem at all. Here's where the sticky issue could happen. There's an increased hospital cost now because typically when someone would deliver, it would be 1 day, then they would come back and the hospital would take care of the child. This is going to be now a 3-day. You can have a 72-hour mandate. This is HB page 592. Currently, when they stay 1, I believe it's 1 for regular birth, 2 typically for a C-section, but now it's going to be up to 3. That's $500 a night. It's a $10,000 increase, an increase of 96 man hours because we have to have 2 deputies. There's been issues before where hospitals, I don't know if you remember, having hostages and all that. And then it came down that you should have 2 people watching somebody at a hospital. So if they stay there 3 days, that's going to be 2 of my guys sitting on that person for 3 days. So the average correctional salary is $40.91 an hour, OT rate of 61.36. It's going to be could be up to 144 hours, which would be $8,836 for a stay for 2 deputies. Now, here's the weird one. I don't know how we're going to deal with this one. This is a really weird one. If the hospital says we're not going to let them stay for 3 days, we would actually could get stuck with the child, and then it would mandate us to have some form of a nursery within our correctional facility. But We would rather not do that. Obviously, we do our best at working with courts now to release pregnant females close to delivery. But, you know, based on the average 2 pregnant detainees a year, that's going to be probably 37,672 extra in costs. Again, the babysitter, some of these things are going to have to, I hate to say it, almost have to happen to force through what the solution is going to be, because I can't see us building a nursery in their correctional facility. I don't know how we're going to work around that one yet. Right to communicate, 3 phone calls free of charge within the first 3 hours of incarceration. Just, you know, that's going to be a little sticky too. Say there was a civil unrest and we do a mass arrest of 20, 30 people. I have no idea how we'll get 3 phone calls out in 3 hours. We'll do our best to comply, but that does increase our phone contract. So that's going to put us at, it's 35 cents a minute times 15 minutes. Approximately, it'll be about $5.25 times 3. So it's $15.70 times 10,000. And that equals the phone contract will go up about $157,500. And that's because that's tripling the amount of phone calls that they used to get. So naturally, it's going to triple the amount for the phone contract. Estimated cost for Law Enforcement Bureau, Axon Enterprise Incorporated body cameras, 5-year cost, $2,515,464. Total 5-year salary cost for the sergeant in charge of body cams, it's going to be $605,593 plus benefits. 5-year total cost of IA Pro, $87,800. 5-year total cost for police law institute mandate compliance training, $54,625. Total mental health screening costs for 115 law enforcement deputies for 5 years, $225,900. Total 5-year salary for 2 civilian record clerks, $360,847, and there's 40% for benefits that need to be added onto that. Total 5-year cost for law enforcement training mandates at $1,281,524 plus yearly COLA and arbitrated award increases. So the total that we're looking at for the Law Enforcement Bureau is going to be $5,131,753. Some training mandates have different frequency intervals, yearly, every 3 years, etc. Just quick numbers, mandatory addition cost to the Law Enforcement Bureau. So I think a lot of these are the numbers that we just went, but you can see mandatory training. It is going to be fairly consistent over the 5 years. Axon cameras, you have the heavy year first, $632,000, because that's a capital cost, and it should level out without any additional capital cost. IA Pro, it starts out, it's $47,800, but it's a $10,000 fee per year. Mental health screenings, that'll remain fairly constant. There are going to be arbitrated award increases based on who's doing it though. So that's going to roughly be $45,180. The Police Law Institute, that's all of our online training. That'll remain fairly constant around $10,925. The 2 record clerks, the reason those numbers are going up, it's anticipated COLAs starting at $68,000 for the 2 people there. Sergeant salary, it's going to be $115,212, but as contractual and arbitrated award and COLA increases go up, they'll go up incrementally a little bit. So the total for the Law Enforcement Bureau is $1,008,900. Estimated total cost for Corrections Bureau over 5 years, $1,092,631 plus salary increases. The hospital stays, pregnant females for 5-year duration will be about $203,773. The increase in the phone contracts over 5 years will be $787,500. Estimated total facility cost for 3 years based on loss of trustee services, and that starts January 1, 2023. That'll be when the number gets bigger, and that'll go up to $4,274,883. That, you know, those contracts are big. It's a lot of work for cooking, cleaning, and laundry. Salary cost of 1 additional warrants clerk, $170,147 over 5 years. 5 additional deputies for bond court, that'll be $1,342,512. Based on the anticipated loss of commissary funds starting in 2023 to fund JUST programs within DuPage County Correctional Center. Then the JUST contracts are about $399,000 a year. That will have to be rolled in on that year, 2021, into budget, because those monies won't be realized through commissary anymore. So the estimated cost for corrections is going to be $9,068,446. That does not include loss of monetary bail, vendor costs for contracts, or trustee labor. This is kind of a spreadsheet that articulates it out. The reason you see the grayed out boxes is because those don't have effect for the first 2 years, but they will in the third year moving forward. It's just the same numbers that I've already pretty much gone over with the contracted services. So laundry, it's about $315,000 a year is what the contract would be if they were doing all the laundry. Kitchen food service is about $547,000 contract. Cleaning about the same. It's $561,561. Those are probably the biggest ones that are going to go up because there's just not going to be anybody in our correctional facility that's going to be in that trustee role. That it's going to be mostly violent offenders. It's going to be a felony punitive environment. So all the costs, mandatory additional costs, run in at $2,748,317. And then the loss of commissary funds, we're looking at a loss of about $226,727. Loss of bail bonds, we'll lose about $133,211. So those losses will manifest in about $359,938. So breakdown of cost totals per fiscal year. FY 2021, you have the law enforcement. It's going to be $1,163,812. Corrections is going to be $435,411. So year one total is going to be $1,599,223. FY 22, it's going to be $975,494, $443,745 for a total of $1,419,239. FY 2023, here's where we're going to see the numbers jump. And again, it's those contracts. LEB, it's going to be $968,158. Corrections will be $2,711,363. So that'll jump that number up as a total $3,697,521. FY 2024, LEB $997,389. Corrections will be $2,729,610. Total for FY 2024 is $3,726,999. FY 2025, $1,008,900, 2 million corrections, $748,317 for a total. FY 25, $3,757,217. So the totals for come out to $5 million for LEB total for a 5-year time period, $5,131,753. 5-year period corrections, $9,068,446. The total for everything combined over a 5-year period, we're looking at about $14,200,199. I know I have a sheet somewhere from the county. They put in the benefits for us. And I don't have that with me, but I think it added on another. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't have that. But the bottom line is what we're looking at. Oh, thank you. Excellent. Yeah, it made the number go from 14. So the final number with the benefits is $15,439,748. So thank you. Appreciate that. So that'll be the total 5-year. Does not include benefit costs, arbitrated award increases, union agreement increases, salary differentials, increased medical care costs, vendor costs, loss of monetary bail, potentials, worker comp claims, etc. So that is all of the dollars and cents. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry it was so long and kind of arduous with all the numbers, but I just wanted you guys to have a clear picture. We have taken a lot of time to tabulate this. We don't want to have any surprises down the road for anybody or ourselves. So thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Sheriff Mendrick. Next, we'd like to invite State's Attorney Robert Berlin to give his presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair Renahan, members of the committee. Let me start just generally some of the issues that are going to come up as far as the State's Attorney's Office use of body cameras. Staffing needs are going to increase in order to manage the tremendous increase in body-worn camera data. A 1-hour event could result in 5 hours of viewing if 5 police officers, all with body worn cameras, are at the scene. And as I will discuss as I go through this presentation, all of that video needs to be not only viewed by our prosecutors, but there's shielding and redaction costs as well. One prosecutor in Benton, Oregon, described their use of body cameras as a 4-page police report going to about 60 pages. We talk about redaction and shielding, and what that is the way we anticipate it, police officers will upload their body camera footage at the end of their shift, and it will go into some type of a cloud storage, maybe evidence.com, but then it will come to us, and it's our job to go through it and redact and shield to protect certain privacy interests. If a police officer, let's say, responds to a domestic call, goes inside the house, and there are minors there, those minors' faces have to be either blocked out or somehow taken out of focus. So the average body worn cam video is about 13 minutes long for most cases, but it takes a trained person about 1 hour to review and redact that information from a recording of that length. In terms of IT needs, obviously, I will get to the enormous increase in cloud storage. Next slide. So the reason that every body camera video has to be viewed by our prosecutor starts with Illinois Supreme Court Rule 412. And we as prosecutors are required to disclose to defense counsel the names and last known addresses of witnesses together with their relevant written or recorded statements. And that would include all statements that are made and captured by body worn cameras. Two very famous cases, the Brady case and the Giglio case, require the people to disclose to the defense all information and material in our possession, which tends to negate the guilt of the accused or which would tend to reduce their punishment therefore. In addition, under Cowles versus Whitley, we have to disclose evidence that we're not even aware of. So we have an obligation to get evidence from the police that may be exculpatory, and it's never enough for prosecutors to say, well, the police didn't give it to us. The courts have said we have an obligation to actually get that from them. Rule 412F also says that the state's attorney has an obligation to make sure that there is a flow of information from the police to our office and to the defense. In addition to the Supreme Court rules on discovery, we are also bound by the Illinois Supreme Court rules of professional responsibility, which provide, again, that prosecutors have an independent ethical obligation to disclose all exculpatory evidence. That's the reason we have to review and look at all body-worn camera footage. In my conversations with numerous prosecutors throughout this country, one of the prosecutors in Wayne County, Michigan, told me about a lengthy narcotics case that they had where they had hours and hours of body-worn camera footage. And it wasn't until they got to one of the last body-worn cameras when they realized that the officer had made a statement about the evidence in the case, which then caused the prosecutor to dismiss that case because they couldn't prove it. So I use that as an example of why we do have to go through all of the footage. Okay, so in 2018, the State of Virginia Compensation Board commissioned a work group study of the impact of body-worn cameras in Commonwealth attorneys' offices in Virginia. And Virginia was requiring their Commonwealth attorneys to all of the law enforcement officers there to use body cameras. This commission was made up of the Virginia Association of Counties, Virginia Municipal League, the Virginia Court of Appeals, Virginia Bar, the Indigent Defense Commission, and the Administrative Office of the Courts. They issued a 66-page report to the Virginia General Assembly and recommended that for every 75 cameras out on the street, one additional prosecutor would be required. The Virginia General Assembly actually passed that into law. So for every 75 cameras, they do require one additional prosecutor in order to handle that additional evidence. Next slide. So that is the study that we are using. I actually spoke with one of the supervisors in the Virginia Beach Commonwealth Attorney's Office. Their county is about 450,000 people. They have 400 and right now about 450 cameras out on the street. We obviously have 920,000 people in this county, but in our conversations with all of the police departments in the county, we expect to have 2,000 body cameras out on the street when they all implement cameras for their departments. Some of the departments have actually started using them, including West Chicago and Roselle. The sheriff has to be on by January 1st of 2022. And then the following year, Aurora and Naperville, followed by additional departments in 2024 and finally 2025. So with 2,000 cameras out on the street and one additional prosecutor for 75 cameras, that comes to 27 additional assistant state's attorneys. Based on our caseload and using 2019 as an example, in terms of felonies and misdemeanors, that would be 10 felony assistants and 17 misdemeanor assistants. And Virginia used starting salary, which is what we're using. So starting salary for misdemeanors or the bottom salary for a felony assistant, which is $66,000. And that's, I've included, added on 40% for benefits, which is how we get to a total of $2,375,800 annually for the attorneys. Next slide, please. The Prosecutor Center for Excellence is a 501c3 organization made up of a number of experts in the field. They've issued a lot of publications about body cameras, and they have recommended certain positions if you're implementing a body-worn camera program. That would include a legal liaison for the program, an administrative liaison who would also be in charge of training, and then really the biggest expense in terms not only of money but of time, but is the redacting and shielding of all these videos. And I believe we would need 4 people in that position. Also, another person for the increased FOIAs that we expect, and that may be on the low end, but 2 certified forensic digital media evidence analysts as well. So in terms of support staff, and this is by the time we get all the departments up and running with body cameras, that would be another $742,000 annually. So the total personnel cost for attorneys and support staff, $3,117,800 annually. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of the data that we expect to be receiving and handling, on the left side there is the number of cases that we charged in 2019. I used 2019 as opposed to 2020 because I think it's a better reflection of what to expect moving forward post-COVID. But a total of 9,405 cases that the state prosecutes. The average gigabytes per case, and again, this comes from just speaking to prosecutors around the country who have body cameras, is 6 gigabytes per case. So when you do the math, you get 56.43 terabytes. The average homicide case would include 49.6 gigabytes of body-worn camera footage. And in Wayne County, Michigan, the chief of investigations there told me that when you add on the data that they get from audio statements, from videotape statements of witnesses, and the cell phone forensic images, which are pretty much in every single case we prosecute now, that comes to 2,185 hours of time, which is at least one assistant working on nothing else for an entire year on the case. So it adds exponentially to the amount of time that's going to be required to prepare for a case like a homicide. On the right is the additional cost for the storage of our videos in TechShare. And actually, compared to what we expected, that part of the cost is actually pretty reasonable when you compare it to the cost of salaries. But we have a contract in place with TechShare, and the cost that we're paying is per user and not per the amount of storage. So unless there's an increase there, the $282,000 is what we expect for additional costs in storage through 2025. Okay, next slide. So this is our total cost. And again, this is through 2025. This is adding on all those personnel costs as they ramp up through 2025, as well as our digital media storage, $10,801,600. And the next slide, please. Some other costs which will not be borne by the county, but which will affect how we operate in prosecuting cases, and that is when we get rid of cash bail. In 2019, the Circuit Court Clerk dispersed over $1 million in restitution to crime victims from money taken in as cash bail. That number will be greatly impacted when we no longer have cash bail. And it will be difficult for many victims to receive restitution. In addition, under statute, the anti-crime fund was created. We have an anti-crime committee here in this county, and we collect money in certain cases for the anti-crime fund, and they distribute it to agencies such as AIM and MAD, DuPage County Crime Stoppers, Illinois State Crime Commission, also FACES 4, which is the Families Against Chronic Excessive Speed, Family Shelter Service for victims of domestic violence, and also YWCA Sexual Assault Services for services for victims of sexual assault. 2019, over $151,000 was distributed to the Anti-Crime Committee for them to distribute to these agencies. And obviously, when cash bail goes away, that money will be greatly reduced. So in addition to the expenditures, the bill will have a significant impact on crime victims. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. State's Attorney. Next, we'd like to invite Public Defender Jeff York.
Good afternoon, thank you. Good news, I need less money than the last two guys. I will start out by echoing a lot of what Ms. Berlin said, because I think we're operating under many of the same assumptions and the same, I guess, legal analysis. I have the same concerns about staff time and digital storage. I also have ethical concerns, and I understand the prosecutor's obligation to view everything once. We have to view it, and then we have to probably view a lot of it with our client. So I think we're going to be watching it more than once. We used the same study. We found the same study separately, his office and my office, from Virginia. And we found similar issues by calling other jurisdictions that are dealing with body cameras. First, in terms of reduction in revenue, which I didn't even include on a slide because I don't have a lot of revenue, but I get about $60,000, or the county does, in terms of reimbursement that judges order after a case is over. It's usually, there's limits on it, it's pretty strict. So $100, $200 per case ends up being about $50,000 to $60,000. That's usually taken from existing bail funds. Since there aren't going to be any bail funds, I think judges will be hesitant to order that. So I'd expect that to go much closer to zero. But that's not really, that's a drop in the bucket, right? This is going to have a profound effect on the public defender's office generally. I think other than the creation of a public defender's office 50 some years ago, because it's going to take us into a world that we aren't necessarily used to. There's two big impacts on us. It's really pretrial releases and body cameras. I'm going to talk about pretrial releases first. As the Chief Judge mentioned, this is going to require in-person pretrial detention hearings. And the amount of information that we get now is going to be very different than what we will get once this law goes into effect. We get access to the reports, the interviews, the tapes, their criminal history, and pretrial reports. We don't get that now. We get 5 minutes with our client to prepare for that hearing now. So the implications are also different. Essentially, clients are going to either be in jail or released, and that's it. And although that issue can be revisited, we are going to have to spend enough time with that client and the materials to make our best argument at that time so they aren't detained. That's going to be our job. So it's going to take way more time and way more material to go through. We're going to have to adjust our case management system. Now we don't get things from the state's attorney's office until we're appointed to a case. We represent everybody in bond court. That's not a problem because we're not exchanging discovery from bond courts, but we will be. So we're going to have to make adjustments to our system now to allow us to get those materials much earlier than we do already. So I'm going to need 2 attorneys to cover that courtroom that's going to have those bond hearings. Basically, I'm going to have one preparing and reading, watching the videos, reading the reports, talking to the client, and then one doing the hearings, and then switch. In addition, I put 2 additional domestic violence attorneys here because I think one of the effects of this part of the act could be profound in domestic violence cases. Those are misdemeanor offenses most of the time. There's a pretty high volume. My current attorney has 465. So I understand the Chief Judge's concern. That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of files to have. And I understand the Chief Judge's concern that we may have to go back to having 2 separate courtrooms to hear those cases. We used to have 2, and the numbers may justify that now. And if that were to happen, I would need probably 2 attorneys to do that. The other thing is domestic violence cases are one of the cases in which a client can be held for the duration of their case. So I think we will be setting those trials immediately and be asking for a trial immediately. And so we will have to prepare quicker than if they were out of custody. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So upfront, I think it's about $44,000. I need a little bit of money to get the lawyers started with computers and other licenses and stuff. And adjusting our case management system isn't a lot of money. And then the long-term effects of those attorneys, those 4 attorneys, isn't that profound. But let's get to body cameras. That's next. Next slide, please. This is where we will have the biggest impact or the biggest effect of this legislation. And as Mr. Berlin said, this isn't a small thing for us. The amount of material that we're going to have to go through and analyze and talk about with our clients, it's significant, I guess. Next slide. So we're probably going to have to add some kind of server space to our current case management system. We didn't anticipate this kind of data, even though we just built it. And it's not that it can't handle all the data, it's the processing of the data. So as the state sends it to us, it slows our system down. And with that, so we've delayed now getting bigger files until in the evening. But I think there's just going to be too many. We're just not going to be able to wait it till night to process all of them. I don't know what that's going to cost yet. I'm meeting with our vendor later this week, and I don't know for sure, so I didn't put it down. Facilities is going to cover the office space because I'm out of it. I could probably fit 2 more people. And the people who, facilities, the chief judge, and the number of people took a tour of my space. And I'm basically at capacity or beyond it, really. I have a lawyer in a library right now. So if that's any indication of in terms of what space we have available to us. So I didn't really include cost of space here. Our digital storage, I think, is going to be about $36,000 additionally per year. I'm anticipating about 30 terabytes of data. For those of you who don't know, because I didn't, a terabyte is 1 million books worth of data. So we're talking 30 million books worth of data just additionally to what we already normally get. And I think Mr. Berlin said he's expecting like in the 50 to 60 terabyte range. That number may come down some because there are, I'm already working with our vendor to reduce the cost to put things that we don't need immediate access to in longer term storage. But even with that, it's 36,000. And this is the short version of my presentation. A year ago, if we stored it the same way when we built our system, which is like 2 years old, it would have been $120,000 a year. So we already have shifted to a more economical way of storing this data, and it may get a little better, but not that much better. I need a lot of new staff just for the body camera thing, and I'm asking for 37, I think, here. So I did 4 before, this is 37, which is 3 million and more. And really that is because we have scraped by forever. And I really don't know that we can absorb a lot of these things. I have 4 secretaries for 30 lawyers. I don't have somebody working my front desk. We rotated because I needed somebody for focus court. And I guess that's somewhat my fault that we can make do, and we have made do. But I think this is going to put us in a situation where making do isn't going to work anymore because there's just not enough hours in the day. And so we were already struggling with caseloads because of COVID. And for my last couple of budget presentations, I've shown the slide of our pending open cases, and it's going like this. Adding body cameras is going to make that much more difficult. I also can tell you, and so I need, in addition to it, the lawyers, I need some support staff, a couple more secretaries, a couple more investigators. I probably need an administrative assistant. I have 2 supervising lawyers for 30. I'm talking about adding 30 lawyers. I'm going to need at least 1 more supervising attorney. I don't think it's fair to have them manage 30 people. I can promise you one thing, though, that if I don't need it, I'm not going to fill it. I mean, I've never done that. I've never blown past my budget, and I don't intend on it. I'm not going anywhere. I don't know if I've set the record for length of time of being public defender. If not, I'm pretty close. And I intend on seeing this through. So if I'm asking for 34 lawyers, if it turns out I can get by with 28, I'm going to get by with 28. I don't know. But I wanted to make sure we asked for what we thought we needed. Next slide, please, Wendy. Thank you. So I don't know what's going to cost to move us or expand our space, but basically, in terms of long-term recurring costs, you're talking about $4 million a year with salary and everything else. The good news for me is I don't need it, most of it right away. You can go to the next slide. I need a lot of it later. Like I said, I don't have any space. So as much as I'd love 10 attorneys next year, I don't have space for them. So it's just not realistic for me. So we're going to have to onboard a little slowly while we figure out what facilities kind of our space issue. So it kind of ramps up really in 2023 is when you start to see a much more significant increase. And we'll just do the best we can in the meantime. So thank you.
Thank you, Public Defender York. Next, we'd like to invite Clerk of the Circuit Court, Candace Adams.
I'm going to be asking for a lot less than Mr. York is even. First, thank you for having us here today and for including us as part of the conversation. Chief Judge Pope-Joy is correct that it takes a whole team to go through all this, and certainly I'm grateful for my team that's in the room today and back in the office. All right, so for our first slide, for our office, we're not really asking for much, hardly anything really. Our office is more impacted by the loss of cash bail. So the slides that we're going to be presenting today is what cash bail looks like for the county, where it's going to, and how it's going to affect the county. This first slide is how cash bail, there's about $5.8 million of cash bail that's distributed in the county. And this slide shows how that's composed. Court fees, fines, court costs, forfeiture, and earned bond. Now you'll see that the 3.7 is all of those, but for disbursement purposes, you also have about $1 million of cash bail that goes to private defense counsel, court ordered to be paid for their fees, and then, like Mr. Berlin said, $1 million towards restitution. Next slide, please. This slide is a breakdown of who that money is distributed onto the top part. You'll see that there's the states, the county, different local agencies, the sheriff, the state's attorney, our office. All those combined make about $3.7 million. It doesn't necessarily mean that these agencies won't be receiving that money at some point, because if you're ordered to pay a cost fee or a court cost or a fee or fine, you still have the obligation to do that. It just won't be coming out of cash bail. So this is if they never paid towards their court costs and their fees and fines. We would normally take it from cash bail. You won't be able to do that anymore. That's about 3.7 million. Some of that we would be able to distribute once they paid. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide discusses part of the legislation that we would normally receive that money and not have to return it, but that we will not be receiving as a county anymore. Earned bond is 10% of cash bail that the county keeps, regardless of case disposition, unless otherwise court ordered. That 10% that is going to the general fund for the county is about $600,000. That's coming from about 8,700 cases. And again, these numbers are from 2019. We thought that was the better year to take these numbers from. Okay. And on bond forfeiture, that's about 400,000 too that's getting distributed, some of which to the county as well. There's also a part of the act in regards to warrant fees. So if you pick up somebody on a warrant, that's a $75 fee. $70 of that is going to the agency that picked you up, and $5 of that is going to the clerk's office, composing about $12,000. Total, that's about $135,000 for the local agency. The sheriff's portion is about $45,000. Next slide, please. Another thing that we think is going to impact the county and how much revenue we're going to get is the requirement regarding licensing. So what happens now is if you fail to pay, it's sent over to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State suspends your license or doesn't renew your license. It's our position, and it's a position that we've had with the state's attorney, that we're no longer able to do that. So in our compliance call, what happens is a lot of the time people come in and say, I found out my license was suspended, they pay. If they never know that that's happening with their license, or it's not happening to their license anymore, we think that's going to be unlikely that they're paying their fees and the court costs. That dollar amount on that call is about $2 million over a 3-year period. It's hard to know, though, what brought them back into court. We, based on our conversations with prosecutors, we believe that it's because they found out their license was suspended or otherwise would not be renewed, so they came in to correct that before they could move on. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is my final slide. In addition to the loss of cash bail, the impact to our office, the actual impact, is configuring some of our case management systems so that they're compliant and collecting the information or not collecting the information that the legislation now requires. That's going to take some significant work on our IT staff, and we think, though, just like Mr. York, if we don't use it, we don't use it. Costs us up to $120,000 in IT hours. And should there be additional courtrooms that we would have to staff, we think up to 3, that would be a cost of about $105,000 in salaries plus benefits.
Thank you, Clerk Adams. Next, we would like to invite Deputy Director of Facilities Tim Harbaugh, who's joining us online to talk about some of the facilities management numbers.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I'm going to get started. You've heard about some of what the office needs are from the state's attorney, public defender, the sheriff. In addition to that, additional space is going to be needed for body camera footage viewing. And then we're going to need some IT runs that are going to need to go into the 503 building. A majority of your facility needs are all within the 503 building, which is also known as the Annex. Currently on the first floor, as the public defender and probation both stated, that is at capacity right now. We're really not able to put any additional staff in there. The second floor is occupied by the state's attorney's office. It's our goal that we can reconfigure the state's, do some significant reconfiguring with the state's attorney's staff and be able to allow him to fit in the space he has now. The third floor of the Annex, it's about 75% smaller than the first 2 floors. But it was constructed to be able to be expanded, and ultimately that's what we're suggesting what we're going to need to do in order to make all this fit. Fortunately, the good one for us, for the sheriff's office, the sheriff's office does have some underutilized space that can be reconfigured at a reasonable cost to be able to fit in his needs there. Next slide, please. As I stated, what we're looking at would be expanding the Annex to the west. We're projecting that build out of about 31,000 square feet would be about $16 million. We're estimating about $5.4 million in order to reconfigure the first 3 floors of the 503 building, along with the sheriff. We have $250,000 we're estimating that's for imaging. That is to reduce the paper files that are currently stored in the space. We want to move those ultimately to the lower level. But we've got to reduce the footprint of those files as much as possible because we're taxing this building as much as we can. We're looking at about $250,000 for that. And then, as I stated earlier, we need to run internet service to run additional fiber there. That's about $200,000. So we're looking at $21,850,000 to meet the space needs for the staffing and the other issues that you've heard earlier discussed. Next slide, please. We did do numerous evaluations to try and figure out what works best. As you can see on the slide to the right, the photo, part of it's cut off, but that's the area that we'd be looking to expand the 3rd floor of the 503 or the Annex building. We have not looked at construction schedule or construction phasing yet. I can say that in order to move ahead with this, what ultimately is the will of the board, we need to get moving as quickly as possible to get an architect and an engineers on board to get this done. Right now, what we've done is really concept designing. We did use third-party estimating to get our dollar amounts to where we believe are accurate with what we need and what we know so far in the brief window we've had to put this together. Next slide, please. I am looking for consideration for doing initial staff head counts for facilities. In my tenure here in 9 years, headcount has gone down -1. We've reduced headcount by 1. But we have added 171,000 square feet of space to maintain. That includes ultimately if this addition were to occur. In addition to that, we've added about 100, and included in that is about 119,000 square feet of space that we need to clean every day, housekeeping needs. So I'm looking for 1 additional maintenance tech and 1 additional housekeeper at a cost of about $70,000 per year. That does not include benefits. So very briefly and quickly, that's kind of what we're looking at from the facilities needs from the presentations you've heard earlier. The next speaker will be the Chief Information Officer, Don Carlson, to talk about the IT needs. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I can be really brief since I only have 1 slide. We're only looking at, what we're looking at is a PC tech for support for the employees that we'd be adding. And that's it. We did put a cost for computers and for a computer docking station and licensing up there as well, just so that you have a reference point, but that's it.
Thank you, Don and Tim. So last but not least, you've heard from all the other agencies. We'll ask our Chief Financial Officer to come up here. He's put some slides together kind of showing the totality of the numbers here. And here's Jeff to talk about it.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see everybody. If we could go to the next slide very quickly. I will be somewhat brief because we did recap some of these numbers, but what we did finance is we went through all of these presentations and tried to carve out all of the costs that are associated with the crime bill for each department. So the first slide you see here is the county sheriff. And what we did for each department is we broke down personnel, commodities, contractual services, and capital into kind of a budget form. And we did that over 5 years. So for example, the sheriff's office, the cost of this bill is estimated $15.4 million. And then the bottom section there, you can see how it's broken out by those main categories. So next slide. And again, we did this for every department that spoke. Circuit clerk is $293,000. Probation and court services, $3.92 million. The public defender came to $9.542 million. State's attorney, $11.14 million. And facilities, $22.5 million. For most of those are capital costs. And information technology, $355,000. So on the next slide, this is a recap, and this is really what we currently estimate from what we took out of all the slides throughout all of our conversations to be the cost of this crime bill. Broken out again over 5 years, broken down by budget categories. The bottom line right now, $63.196 million. Next slide. This is the revenue impact. The circuit clerk's office talked about the loss of revenue. We did have an opportunity to break that down in the specific years that were outlined in the presentation. That comes to almost $2.3 million. So right now, as it stands, call it the hit on the income statement is a little bit more than $65 million. I can tell you that the capital costs, the one-time costs right now, are probably the easiest costs to fund. We do have some opportunities there. We'll know within the next week or so if we'll have another CARES bill. We do have some money for CARES number 1, as we call it. We do have some, call it borrowing or bonding options, but that's the key word is we have some options there to give the county board as far as how to finance the one-time costs or the capital costs. The ongoing costs of personnel and all of those operating costs are a little bit more problematic as it stands right now. If you want to go back one slide, because if we just look at personnel in each year, we do increase by 24 to $8 million in personnel costs, and then the $9.2 million in the next year. So those are ongoing costs that we would have to find in our operating budget as it stands right now. So this is our first look at this, in particular financially and how to fund this. We'll continue in finance and administration, working with the departments as we move on to a next budget year to determine more options as far as funding this next budget year and in future years. So thank you, Chairwoman. That's my presentation.
Go ahead, Wendy, next slide. So to kind of just wrap this up before I turn this back over to Chair Renahan, Some next steps, there is a mandate to purchase these body cameras by January 1st of this coming year. To contract an engineering firm to plan for necessary building expansions to house the new personnel, still development of potential savings, monitoring of additional trailer bills, as well as further refinement of potential expenses. So those are 5 things that we kind of outlined going forward. But with that, next slide, Wendy, and I'm going to turn it back over to Chair Renahan.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, stakeholders. I mean, this was not an easy job that we've asked you to start off with here for our county, but I do appreciate that DuPage County is tackling this in a very forthright fashion, and I thank you all for your patience in listening today. With that, let's open it up for questions. Member Vice Chair Pachowski.
What do we need if we don't get any trailer bills? And I'm saying we're not getting any help from Springfield. Are we increasing our budget 10%, 15% to fund this? And where's the source of this going to come from?
Well, that's really a good question. Our general fund budget, our operating budget, is almost $180 million. So we would need somewhere in the range of maybe a 10 to 15% increase in the general fund budget, because all of these departments are out of the general fund. So determining how to fund this and what the revenue source may be, or cuts in other areas, will be extremely difficult. And again, I go back to the operating side, not the capital side. That's where the challenge is.
I'm hoping we have trailer bills, but if we don't have trailer bills, then where do we go from here? Because that's going to be a big problem to pay for this. I'm overwhelmed that, I'm hoping that trailer bills come in, because otherwise we can't, we're going to hit the taxpayer for a 15% increase after COVID-19 and loss of income and people not getting their paychecks and going through these tough times. And then does this make DuPage more safe or less safe?
I think that's more of a rhetorical question,
Well, I'm
right?
saying,
I appreciate it. Member Chaplin, do you have a question?
Okay, thank you, Chair Renahan. So just a couple questions regarding the presentation first. I know we're talking about, first of all, I think it's important for everybody to keep in mind that these are, this is a estimate of the cost. So as numbers get refined and we dig a little deeper down, this may not be the actual financial impact. So I think we have to keep that in mind. And I understand that the body cameras, the storage of that is a huge cost. But from what I'm hearing, there are services out there that can help us with our storage, with cutting down the amount of storage, taking relevant pieces of camera footage and storing it for us. So, there might be technology coming in the future that might keep those, reduce those costs eventually. You might have a lot at the beginning, but as the years go on and technology improves, we may see less money in that storage of the data. And we may be able to find ways to cut, like I said, that data and only keep the necessary data. I heard that some police departments are storing data of police just driving around. And it's not, they don't really need that storage. That's what I've been hearing. But that's one of my statements. But my other question is, and this is for the sheriff. So you said that we're going to be increasing the amount of violent offenders, and we're probably going to have the highest population that we had in the jail. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, so what you're looking at, you have a court system right now holding everything. It's not open. There's a ton of warrants out there. It is not going to stop arrests. They're going to still come. We have the only correctional facility in the county. So they're going to still come every day with the normal volume of arrests that occur no matter what. This bill doesn't stop arresting. It's just housing. So all you're changing is a temporal. You're saying they're going to stay here a day or two instead of a month or two. So that's the only thing this bill is doing. It's not going to be any safer. It's going to be a lot harder for us because then you're going to have a very large transitory. Crime is already going up. This was a dog whistle for Cook County crime. We're already seeing it in DuPage. So those crime levels are going to continue to increase. It's not going to get better. So we're going to have more and more people being brought in our facility due to this bill. That's just a fact.
Okay, so, but then you said your commissary is going to go down, but your population's going up, but your commissary is going down. But if you have people in there every day, do you think that people that are just in there 1 or 2 days aren't going to get anything out of the commissary?
Correct. The commissary is typically going to be for people who are going to be there for a while who want different amenities, whether it be soap, different deodorants, food, but if you're only there for a day or two, you're not going to have time to get your account established, be buying stuff, a bunch of stuff. It's just not going to work like that. They're going to be so transitory. It's going to be a processing station. You're here for burglary, process you, go back to the streets.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just needed some clarification on that. Let me see if I have, hold on, I have a list of questions here for. Oh, so, and then with the body cameras, we said that there's going to be 2,000 throughout the county, correct? And those are going to be coming from municipalities? Part of the storage we're going to be storing for the municipalities, is that correct?
Correct. Obviously, they have their own storage. We have to store just the cases that turn into criminal cases.
Oh, you have to view.
They then transfer that data over to us and it becomes our obligation to store it.
So would we be going into any kind of like intergovernmental agreements with them that we could, you know, have them charge them for the storage of that, or is that not possible through this legislation?
Probably not. It's like evidence right now.
Okay.
If you just take videotape statements of witnesses, those are all digital. They just transfer them to us. Once we get them, it's our obligation to store it.
Okay.
And then if it's actually admitted at trial, what we usually do is we put it on a flash drive or a disk, and then it becomes the circuit court clerk's
Okay,
obligation.
thanks, Bob. I just wanted to make sure
Sure.
that was clear. And then, oh, and then the mental health training. With the mental health training, you mentioned the helmets that they have that, so you mentioned about the helmets with the mental health training.
Right.
So does that, would that count towards their mental health training?
Yes, that's why we didn't put any billing issues on that. We already
Okay.
had that one surrounded, and you guys assisted us with that for the allocation for the mental health diversity training. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding, that's called an Axon VR headset. That's the portion where you can pick everything from hard of hearing to schizophrenia, any mental health disorder, experience it yourself, then it flips and you handle that exact situation. So that will be part of, and that's another reason why we wanted to buy these body cams through Axon. That's an Axon product too. So it makes it contiguous, and it's going to be a very good system. That's already in place. So we're already doing the de-escalation training. We're the CIT instructors. So this is going to be akin to that. It's going to be like another CIT, and that one there isn't going to be any additional cost to the county.
Okay, and then also with the mental health evaluations that they're going to have to, now, is that something we can work in with our insurance maybe to get those rates down for that extra, would that be like a health insurance cost that we're looking
You know,
into?
It could be that actually, I believe that was just a $23,000 bill for all of the people who need to be trained. So I know we got a pretty good rate. That's fairly cheap for mental health services for 115 people.
Okay, and then the additional phone calls, those 3 phone calls to, again, do you think there'd be any possibility to work with the provider, since you're going to be doing these, more of these phone calls, to get a, you know, maybe a break on that or a discount? I mean, is there any type of
Contracts? Some are more generous as you go up, but we already have factored that in, that they base it on minutes. However many minutes, it's a package. And of course, we try to get the very best package we can, but it'll be tripling phone time. So it's natural to assume that people are going to utilize that when they can. Everyone utilizes what time they get. So it's probably going to be a triple phone contract. So it's just a matter of minutes on the plan.
Right, but I'm just asking if there's some way to, you know, maybe negotiate with them.
We do that on all our contracts. We
Okay.
always try to get the best price.
Right.
We bid out everything that needs to be bid out. Yeah, and just so you know, we're constantly, I mean, we research every single grant link that we can find, even if it doesn't seem like it might apply. We've gotten grants from odd places before that you didn't think would apply to the police. And that's something also, any of you that find grant opportunities or money opportunities, let us know. We'll always flesh it out. We had heard that there might be body cam money out there that didn't pan out, but please continue. We have a grant team, and any chance we get to supplement our budget with grant money, we do. We've done probably well over $4 million in grants over the last couple of years.
Great. Well, thank you. And thanks everybody. This was a very good presentation. Thank you all for your answers and for your putting everything together for us. It's really helpful.
Other questions from anyone who's here today, the committee or other board members? Oh, Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I am just sitting here astounded. We just had our public safety experts just tell us that we need $65 million over the next 5 years. And I can't believe every board member is not standing up and saying something. I know Member Chaplin said these are estimates. Even if they're off 50%, that's over $30 million we have to come up with on a budget that already we're having problems with. And for the last 3 county board meetings, we had members of this board, Member Tornatori, Member Pachowski, myself, Member Eckhoff, Member DeCiani, Mr. Krajewski, said they had problems with this legislation because it was an unfunded mandate. And we're sitting here listening to this today, and all I heard is that, well, we got to find other funding experts, or, hey, can we get a better rate on hours? I mean, this is going to have a major effect on county government. And guess what? Other aspects of county government are going to suffer because of this, because we don't have the money. The only way we can do this is not by cutting and not by doing anything else. It's by raising taxes and finding additional revenue, which is more new taxes to pay for this. And again, many of my colleagues who are very vocal on many issues, again, are sitting here not saying anything. And I don't understand it. I mean, many times in committee, I've been asked, because of my years of experience and seeing what's going on, I've been asked my opinion. And when I sat there the last 3 county board meetings, said, this is going to be a problem. You know why? Because it's over 20 years of anything, when the state does anything on this scale, they don't take care of it themselves. They put it on the backs of the county and the municipalities. And we're seeing this firsthand, 60-something million dollars. And again, if we're talking about public safety, I mean, our public defender, who we know is a good man and does more with less than anybody, tells us he needs 37 attorneys. I think we need, that's a big SOS to us, that this plan is a problem. And what can we do now? The governor's already signed it. So where are we? I mean, we're talking about major expansion. I mean, I was here for the last expansion and we had problems. I mean, expanding the 503 building, I don't know if anyone was here remembers the massive flooding we had, and that's why we don't use the basement on the 503 building, because of the flooding that we had. We're going to try to expand that building. I mean, for us to do this and have to expand our complex, DuPage County, we've done a great job, but there are so many issues here, and I can't believe every member is not screaming about this. And that if we are depending on trailer bills to fix this, I think we're kidding ourselves, because it's never going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, members. I think we're getting a little off track here. This really is a conversation on financial impact. Like, as I said in my opening remarks, I know we all are emotional over it, and I think we all do have emotional impact to it. But today is a day for, fact finding. And I think, if we can just stay on track with that, I think, we'll get our answers, our questions to our answers as best as possible.
Well, point of personal privilege, Madam Chair. Again, I was elected by the people of DuPage County, and I knew they were chairman of the committee, but this all does have one effect. It's not one portion of it. It's going to have a major effect on complete county government. And this is a financial ramification. $65 million, that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about anything else. This was the bill that was passed. This is now state law. This is a problem. So yes, $65 million is an economic problem that we will have here in the county.
All right, thank you, Member Zay. Did I see Member DeCiani's hand up?
Yep. Yeah, I echo Member Zay's concerns. We have a very tight budget as it is. Our sales tax numbers are down. We have an unfunded mandate of $65 million in 5 years. We have a lot of committed projects that we are going to probably have to cut into, whether they're capital projects or whether other areas that we currently offer services like human services, which is something that's near and dear to me. I don't know if we could support a trailer bill and actually help draft something that would exempt DuPage County from this or phase this in over years versus having to do this, in the order in which it's putting the burden financially. We're not a home rule county that could go ahead and levy above CPI and try to get, deal with this issue. Nor do we want to have to do that. But even if we had the ability, we can't because we're not home rule. So it's really going to have to come out of some other pot of money. Something's going to take a hit. And there's, we don't run a very abundant, we don't have a lot of extra fat in our budget. We run things very lean. That's how it's always been. But we do provide good services. So I'm concerned as to what's going to have to give. It's not, 500,000, $1 million. It's $65 million. That's a lot of money, again, I would hope we can maybe support a trailer bill if they're open to it. They talked about this. Let's try to get something. Let's draft something and let's get it out of legislative and see what we can do here. But this is definitely going to impact us in a tough way. And my concern, again, we care for seniors, we care for people with mental illness, we care for people with disabilities. What bucket of money are we going to take this out of? Who's going to take the hit? A kid with autism, a senior with housing issues, have equal concerns. I think that, we need to be heard. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to oppose this. But if, that's already done, that ship has sailed, let's get the trailer bill filed and let's see if we can make an exemption out of this, or at least phase this in so that we have time and we have the ability to try to find funding for this somehow. But to do this all in one shot is going to put us at a very, very much a disadvantage. I don't know if staff has any options as to where we can find these dollars, but I'm just concerned what's going to take a hit here in our budget that we need to know about, because something's got to give. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Member DeCiani. And I just want to again say, these are first steps. We will be talking about refinement, talking about funding, as we go forward. This is laying it, out on the table for all of us to talk about. And I really think we need to respect our stakeholders who have taken so much time to be here today, listen to all of each other. And if we have questions for them specifically, that's how I'd like to see this committee use the time. Member Desart.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. As we move this process forward, one of the things we do every single year when we look at our budget is to ask our department directors to show us what their ideal budget would look like with the 10% cut, with the 15% cut, with the 20% cut in the budget. So what I'd like to see as we move this process forward and figure out how we're going to pay for these unfunded mandates, I'd like to see maybe in the next month or 6 weeks, our law enforcement, our sheriff, our state's attorney, everybody who spoke today, come back and show us what it might look like if they reduce that by 10% or 15% or even 20%. Thank you.
I think we all anticipate further conversations. This certainly won't be it. Any questions? Who else?
Can I add one more thing? When we talk about having to cut, we've already lost our gang drug unit because of cuts. So where are we going to cut? Are we going to take more cops off the street? Are we going to take more state's attorneys off, the office? The sheriff already said arrests are still going to be coming in. So we need these people more than ever. We still have a drug issue. We still have an opioid problem. So are we going to cut the sheriff's office because of this? I mean, this doesn't make sense, because now we're going to have a mandate on the sheriff and the state's attorney that you're going to ask them to have to go into their budget and take away manpower. This is where, we're here to protect people, not to actually have to give less protection. We're trying to get the gang. I know the sheriff is trying to get the gang TAC unit back on the street because the drugs are still coming into our county, and that requires manpower, technology. So we're going to ask him to, how do you? So you're going to ask them to give up $65 million over 5 years. That's a huge cut. You know what I mean? Those are big cuts into core and critical services that we rely on to keep this county safe. So again, the buck's got to come from somewhere, and to ask the sheriff or the state's attorney to have to roll up because of an unfunded mandate when we don't have problems in our county. That's why I think an exemption probably needs to be made for counties less than 1 million in population where we don't have these issues. We put money and training into our officers. So we don't have excessive force, wrongful deaths. Those are things that don't happen here. And we're having to deal with a national crisis that is being imposed on our county. So those are my concerns. I don't want to have to see the sheriff have to give up one single man on the street. I want to put that drug task force back in place so that he can do his job as he wants to. So major flags. Thank you.
Point of personal privilege, Madam Chair, it's just, I just wanted to respond to Mr. DeCiani and just clarify, I didn't mean cut the department. I was using that as a comparison. When we do our budget annually, we ask department chairs or heads to cut their budget, show us what that would look like. I didn't mean for this. I was just using that as an example. I'm saying for the HB 3653 mandates to show us what it looks like if that was cut by 10, 15, or 20%. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Other questions? I do have a question, and that is in terms of facilities, because if we look at how big this, this number is, right? And we looked at something like 21, $22 million of it is adding a third floor onto a facility that we have. And I'm just wondering, in this day and age of COVID and remote working and the crazy year we've had, what opportunity is there to fill some of these jobs with, remote workers, whether that be reviewing film or, doing other, responsibilities required under here. And maybe that's facilities, maybe that's state's attorney. I'm not quite sure who to address this with.
And I think I can handle at least one part of it, and that is right now, we're able to have attorneys work remotely when they're not in court using TechShare. We've been able to do that, but the courts are now open as of this week. We're going to start doing trials again. The reality is the attorneys are going to have to be in the office. Yeah, yes, maybe there are days if they don't have cases up, they might be able to work remotely, but I think we're going to need them to be around. Witnesses are going to be coming in for preparation. Once we actually start trying cases, I think it becomes very difficult to have staff working remote on a regular basis. It really does.
Any other responses from facilities or anyone on that question? I see Nick walking up.
I mean, obviously the capital component of the facilities is a big portion. The addition on there, and that's predicated on ultimately seats we have to construct for new employees. And we're working closely with all the electeds to figure out, at the numbers that we're given right now, and I think Tim was very clear on that, there's no fitting those in what we have right now. The first floor is completely packed, as he said, but obviously if those number of seats, number of desks that we have to put in there are reduced, there's some point where can we fit in some? Yes, but not anywhere near the volume that we're talking about. So it's all a numbers game with the space.
Chairman Renahan.
You know what? Let's have member.
Thank you, Member Renahan. So
Sorry, I'll be right with you, Mary.
kind of going along Chair Renahan's comment about working from home, there's a lot of vacant office space in DuPage County right now too. Could we have a satellite office that, we wouldn't necessarily have to rebuild here, but we have a satellite office, that we could make one of these vacant office spaces into the judicial
I can
satellite.
start that answer, but I'm guessing that maybe some of the electeds might want to get up and do it. That discussion was had, and there's a continuity issue with splitting offices up, and having part of an office in one area, part of office in another area creates large logistical issues. But I think maybe that might be something from the state's attorney or public defender that if you guys want to, I mean, obviously from our standpoint, if we can move to a different location, that's most likely, because there's nothing more expensive than an addition on a building. That's the most expensive project you can do versus clean new construction somewhere or buying a building somewhere.
Chairman Renahan.
We have the state's attorney here to answer that question.
Yeah, so the problem we have is. Sorry, want me to continue?
Please.
The courts are all here. They're in this, in the courthouse, except for one field court, which is why the attorneys really can't be somewhere else. If they're not in the same building, it's a huge problem to get to and from court and not to be able to other.
So how hard is it to think about? Can you please mute if you're online? Thank you. Please.
It becomes a problem if they can't speak to each other before or after court. We really have to be in the same building. Years ago when I was in Cook County, you've got 5 suburban districts, 5 suburban courthouses. So you could have, and you did have, those satellite offices. We don't have that situation here. So that's the issue. And I don't know if Mr. York.
Public Defender York, would you?
I would echo what Mr. Berlin said. I think it would be difficult for our staff to be off-site, and I especially am concerned about my clients. My clients are all indigent, and so there's not really a great public transportation system here. So I think getting my clients from this building and then engaging with us so we can prepare with them, if it's in another building, would be difficult. So could we do it? Yes. Is it a good idea? In my opinion, no.
Chairman Renahan.
Yes, Member Ozog.
Thank you. One consideration might be that tertiary staff, the people reviewing the cameras, et cetera, might be able to be either off-site, maybe some evaluation could be done on 421. I think that we're going to have, and again, we can't predict any of this, but I've read recently that there is a huge market in sublet in office space throughout the country, obviously, but in DuPage County. And that might be something to consider, to look at the entire campus and consider where there might be able to be some changes in space utilization. And the other thing to remember with the facility or with the facilities is the CARES money. And if we're able to apply some CARES money, which hopefully will be coming our way in the near future, that will certainly take some of the pain out of the $65 million number. Thank you.
Other members, Member Krajewski?
Thank you. Just a quick question. I want to thank everybody for the presentation. I know we're going to have a lot of ongoing discussions on where the money is going to come from or what cuts we're going to make. And if it's 63 million over 5 years, or we cut 20%, it's 40 million. It's still a very big number. And we're going to have a lot of ongoing discussions on what if we do this, what if we do that. But in the meantime, I know Member Pachowski had mentioned about trailer bills coming. I would like us to send at least a letter to every legislator in DuPage County that voted for this bill and just kind of ask them if they're going to be coming forward with trailer bills that, it's estimated. I'm sure they probably, they've got some presentation in front of them, but to cost us or our taxpayers in DuPage County $60 million. And if they can, look at, what their thoughts are on where it should come from. Because remember, we're not home rule, as most of the counties aren't. Some towns can provide body cams maybe by increasing taxes through their home rule powers, but we don't have that. So we can't raise any taxes. We can't, raise people's taxes here in DuPage to pay for this bill. Only thing we can do is cut somewhere, cut other things, or not provide the services we're providing. So I would just ask them to let us know what their thoughts are and how we should pay for it. Or maybe they can actually then, once they got the magnitude of the cost, they can be jumping on trailer bills to help fund this thing, or to make some changes, or however they're going to do it, or give us some authority to raise money to pay for this. But just at least we can get the ball going. We're going to be talking over the next several months about, can we outsource something to a vendor versus doing it in-house, or can we find facilities? I mean, those are all good and things that are going to cut our costs. We're going to have a lot of discussions, but at least let's get them out there knowing what the impact on us here, so they can go down to Springfield, at least work on a trailer bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Member. We have Public Defender York here.
I just wanted to address a couple things about body cameras, because that's really the biggest impact for myself and Mr. Berlin. That's where all the people come from, and that's where the space need comes from. That's not going to change, in my opinion, unless they eliminate it completely. And the problem is, some of these jurisdictions don't have to be on board until 2023, but they're getting on board now. That problem isn't going away. The storage space is a cost, but it's not nearly the cost of the number of people we need to review it. And the problem is, I don't think that is something we, as an attorney, I feel comfortable outsourcing. Other jurisdictions have done that. Mr. Berlin and I both agree that's a horrible idea, and I don't think it complies with the ethical requirements that we have as attorneys and our duty in my office to our clients. So I think that is something that we have to have attorneys view this. I don't think that's something we can contract out even to an investigator, because frankly, I think the attorney working on the case will understand the significance of something an officer said or didn't say, or did or didn't do, much more so. I mean, and it's really the attorney's license on the line in terms of complying with that. So you can talk about some of the stuff in terms of reducing the cost, but the biggest cost to my office and Mr. Berlin's office is the number of people related to body cameras. Without that, we still need the space, we still need the people. The rest of it is 10% of the rest of the cost.
Thank you. Thank you, Public Defender.
I'm sorry.
Member Chaplin?
I'm sorry, one last question or comment.
Yeah, please.
Do you think that, we're the first county to put these figures out? Do you think it would be possible for staff to reach out to other counties just to get to see what their estimated costs are? If, we've done that, or,
Sure, we have
I know we
time
did
to go to New York
Virginia.
again.
I know they did Virginia, but I'm talking like
Yes.
locally here.
You should
or
have
other
just given me
counties.
more slides, and then I would have not had to come up first office. So we reached out to every public defender's office in the area. No one's touched this but us so far. They've thought about thinking about it, but no one has put numbers together, made proposals, had a meeting like this, had stakeholders, met with other stakeholders. In this area, no one has done it yet, at least from our perspective. And we checked last week.
But as they do it, if we could maybe get those numbers, or, have staff reach out to them and kind of see what their estimate costs are, to see how we're, faring with the other counties. I think that might be helpful as well.
All right, thank you, Member Chaplin. Other questions? Anyone? Yeah, I do have a question, actually, but this is probably our state's attorney is my best ask. We're being based on number of people in a county, but these body cams apply to a number of people in a sheriff's unit. Is that a distinction that can be made, or no?
I understand the distinction between the number of people in the county.
Well, I guess
versus-
wasn't the legislation, isn't it based on number of people in a county? However, our sheriff's unit does not police the whole county. I guess that's what
Right.
I'm just trying to get my arms
I
around.
think that was the schedule for when municipalities would have to comply with the act to get body cameras, depending on the size of the jurisdiction. So I believe January 1st of 2022, our counties or municipalities over 500,000, which is why the sheriff has to comply by that date. And then January of 2023, our municipalities, I think over 100,000, which would be Aurora and Naperville. And then
So
after
our
that,
county is being counted essentially as a municipality.
yes, I think it says counties
county
or
or municipality?
municipalities.
Okay, and follow-up question, currently the municipalities are reviewing their own, is that what you were saying before? They're currently reviewing their own body cam information?
You mean before they send it to us?
Yes.
So we don't expect that they will do any redacting or shielding. The way what I've been told is police officers will complete their shift, and they have to then upload their footage into the system. They're only going to send us the body camera footage that results in actual cases. Many of their calls, probably most of a police officer's calls, are not going to result in a criminal case. So that data is something that the police departments will have to store for at least 90 days, but it's not going to make its way over to us.
Okay.
I think, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I'm just
Okay.
trying to see what's done in practice today versus comparing with what the future holds, so, thank you. Other questions from the committee? Member Tortori, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everybody who made the presentation. I think before and this goes to a member start as chair of legislative. Before we start talking about trailer bills, I'd like to see us somehow get DuPage mayors and managers involved here too, because we're just talking about the county cost. There's also going to be a cost to each individual municipality. Their police officers who are going to have to be equipped with body cams, also their reviewing of the documents, et cetera. And I don't think there's anybody here from DuPage mayors and managers today, but presumably at some point they're going to have a number that it's going to cost municipalities. And that, I think there's strength in numbers. If they and us were to get together and talk about a trailer bill, I think makes more sense than just us acting alone. So just a thought.
All right, thank you, Member Tornatore. Any other questions, comments? All right, well, again, thank you all for coming out today. I mean, this is really something special to have all of you here today and to answer our questions and to put on such extensive presentations on a very difficult subject. With that, I'll turn to old business. Do we have any old business? Do we have any new business? Do I have a roll call for adjournment?
I'll
A
move
motion,
to
I'm
adjourn.
Sorry,
I'll move to adjourn.
long day. Motion, do we have a second? Yes.
Paula.
Paula? Deacon Garcia, roll call, please.
Member Chaplin.
Aye.
Member Covert. Member Desart.
Aye.
Member Eckhoff. Member Garcia. Aye. Member Krajewski. Member Ozog.
Aye.
Member Pachalski.
Aye.
Member Schwarzy.
Aye.
Member Selman.
Aye.
Member Zay.
Aye.
Chair Renahan.
Aye. Thank you again.
Joe Krajewski voting aye.
Noted.